In the Control Costs module, we introduce tools and techniques for performance measurement called Earned Value Management and Forecasting. In this module, we will review the basic concepts and formulas of earned value and introduce new forecasting formulas to predict future project results. At any given time during project execution, there is a series of information that should be known by the project management team. First, the project management team should know the estimated total cost of the project. Typically, this will be agreed upon by key project stakeholders and approved into a cost baseline. In earned value, we will call this budget at completion and abbreviate it as BAC. The project team should also know the amount of money that has been spent on resource effort, materials, and equipment. This work performance data must be collected by the project management team. In earned value, we will call this actual cost and abbreviate it AC. Planned value represents the value of work that should be completed based on the current date and time. By knowing the percentage of work that should be or is planned to be completed and the budget at completion, the project team can calculate the planned value. For instance, if the project was scheduled to take 5 days and cost $1,000, the planned value after 1 day, or 20% of the schedule, would be $200. Simply put, planned value is the dollar value of the work that should be done. In contrast, earned value represents the value of the work that has been reported as complete. By knowing the percentage of work that has actually been accomplished and the budget at completion, the team can calculate the earned value. For instance, if the project was scheduled to take 5 days and cost $1,000, the earned value after 40% of the scope statement is completed would be $400. Simply put, earned value is the dollar value of the work that is completed. Once we understand where we should be, represented by planned value, where we are, represented by earned value, and our cost of achievement, represented by actual cost, we can measure our project performance. In earned value management, 4 work performance measurements will be used. Schedule variance and cost variance can be used by the team to understand current performance in dollars. The Schedule Performance Index and Cost Performance Index will be used to understand a ratio of performance. We will use 3 simple steps to learn the formulas of these 4 measurements. Step 1 is that all formulas begin with earned value. Step 2 is to use the proper mathematical operator. The word variance is another word for difference or subtraction, so we will use subtraction for both schedule and cost variance calculations. An index can also be thought of as a ratio or division, so we will use division for both schedule and cost performance index calculations. Step 3 is to use the proper comparative value. To better understand schedule performance, we will compare what we earned against what we should have earned, or planned value. Simply put, schedule variance measures the difference of work completed and work planned. SPI measures the ratio of work completed and work planned. To better understand cost performance, we will compare what we earned against what we spent, or actual cost. Simply put, cost variance measures the difference of the value of the work completed and actual cost of that work. CPI measures the ratio of work completed and actual costs. When reporting project performance to key project stakeholders, not only will they want to know the performance of the project today, but also the direction the project is headed in the future. In project management, we use the term forecasting to describe the calculation of estimated project results. The idea is that we can attempt to predict the performance of the project at the end based on our understanding of past performance and some general assumptions. There are two general assumptions we can choose from when forecasting. Usually, we will forecast future results based on past performance. For example, if we are halfway done with the project work and have overspent the budget by $50,000, we may assume that we will also overspend the budget by $50,000 in the second half of the work, for a forecasted overrun of $100,000. Conversely, we may decide to forecast future results based on the baseline plan. For example, if we are halfway done with the project work and have an overrun of $30,000, we may assume that the second half of the project will be performed exactly according to plan. In this scenario, our forecasted overrun at the end may only be $30,000. It's worth noting that while the concepts learned in forecasting can be used for calculating cost or schedule forecasts, this module and the exam will only explore cost forecasting models. There are four major types of work performance information that we may want to calculate using forecasting. EAC stands for Estimate at Completion, representing how much we think the project will cost when all of the work is completed. In theory, we hope for this number to be at or close to the budget or BAC. However, as variances inevitably become present in project work, the estimate at completion may be greater or smaller than the BAC, representing over or under budget. ETC stands for Estimate to Completion, representing how much money we believe the remaining project work will cost. In theory, we hope this number is close to the remaining budget. However, as variances become present in the project work, the estimate to completion will change. The idea is to understand how much money is required to finish the project work. VAC stands for Variance at Completion, representing how much over or under budget we anticipate being when all of the project work is complete. For a project that is exactly on budget, the VAC will be 0. However, a project suffering from cost overruns will have a negative VAC, while a project with good cost performance will have a positive VAC. Finally, TCPI stands for To Complete Performance Index. This represents the rate at which future project work must be performed in order to finish the project at plan. In theory, we hope this number is at 1.0, representing 100% work efficiency. This would mean that we need to perform exactly at plan to finish at plan. However, imagine a scenario where we are over budget. Now for every dollar spent, we must earn more than $1's worth of work to finish at the original plan. In this scenario, our TCPI might be 1.15. You can think of this as meaning we need to give 115% work efficiency in order to finish at plan. Now let's look at the formula for each type of forecast. Estimate at completion is the total amount of forecasted costs at project completion. There are two major building blocks to determining EAC. The past, represented by how much work has been spent on the project work completed through today, and the future, represented by how much we anticipate spending on the remaining project work. Forecasted future spending can be referred to as ETC and will be covered in the next slide. The more common assumption is that future performance will be based on past performance. For example, if we have been over budget so far, the remaining project work will probably also be performed over budget at the same rate. In this scenario, you can simply take the original budget for the project and divide it by your project's current rate of spending, or as we will refer to it, cost performance index. In this scenario, if your CPI is equal to 1, indicating performance at plan, then your EAC will be equal to your BAC. Further, if your CPI is less than 1, indicating poor performance, then your EAC will be more than your BAC. The other scenario is based on the assumption that project behavior will change and future performance will be forecasted based on the current baseline. In this scenario, it is useful to remember that EAC has two components, the past and the future. Since we cannot change the past, it will simply be represented by our actual costs incurred to date. Since our assumption for the future will be based on the original plan, we must determine how much the remaining work is planned to cost. We can find this easily if we know the planned cost of all of the work, our BAC, and the amount of work that has actually been completed, our earned value. Subtracting earned value from our budget at completion essentially gives us our unearned value, or the planned value of work remaining. By adding this figure with our actual costs, we can forecast the total project costs if future work is performed at plan. While the math is not too challenging, it can be difficult to know which formula to use. Generally, unless you are told otherwise, you will forecast based on past performance using the formula in scenario 1. However, if you are asked to forecast with the assumption that future work will be at plan, then you must use the formula in scenario 2. Estimate to completion, or ETC, is an estimated cost of work that is remaining. Once the estimate at completion, or EAC, has been established, it is easy to find the ETC. Since EAC represents the forecasted cost of all project work, we can find the ETC by simply subtracting our actual costs from the EAC. Simply put, we can say that the forecasted remaining costs is equal to all of the forecasted costs minus the actual costs to date. Remember that we can forecast based on one of two different assumptions. For ETC, the formula is always the same. However, the formula that we use to calculate EAC would be different. Unless you are told otherwise, you will forecast based on past performance using the first formula we learned. However, if you are asked to forecast with the assumption that future work will be at plan, then you must use the second formula we learned. Variance at completion, or VAC, is simply the difference between our original baseline budget and our new forecasted budget. For this formula, we will start with our original budget, referred to as budget at completion, and then subtract our new forecasted spending, known as the estimate at completion. If the resulting number is negative, you are over budget. If the number is positive, you are within or under budget. Remember that we can forecast based on one of two different assumptions. For VAC, the formula is always the same, but the formula that we use to calculate EAC would be different. Unless you are told otherwise, you will forecast based on past performance using the first formula we learned. However, if you are asked to forecast with the assumption that future work will be at plan, then you must use the second formula we learned. Our last forecasting formula introduces to complete performance index, or TCPI. This concept may be the most difficult to grasp. Simply put, we are attempting to determine the rate of cost performance the team must perform at to complete the project exactly at plan. A project that is exactly at budget will not need to make any modifications. Therefore, their TCPI would be equal to 1. A project that is underperforming will need to overperform for the remaining project work, so their TCPI will be greater than 1, say 1.15. And a project that is ahead can essentially underperform and still finish at plan, for example, a TCPI of 0.85. The basic premise of TCPI is to find the ratio of work remaining expressed in dollars against the amount of money left in the budget. By dividing the work remaining and the dollars remaining, we can determine a performance index that the project must work at to complete the project at plan. In most cases, the formula can be represented by putting work remaining in the numerator. This can also be thought of as unearned value, or represented mathematically as BAC minus EV. The denominator will be dollars remaining. This can be thought of as unspent budget, or represented mathematically as BAC minus actual costs. The result will be a number that fluctuates around 1.0 depending on performance. It is worth acknowledging that some projects are not able to finish at plan. In these cases, we may choose to come up with a new project baseline that can be used as a target completion. In this scenario, the formula for work remaining stays the same. However, the formula for dollars remaining, an alternative budget or rebaseline budget, will be used. We have represented this by denoting a 2 next to BAC in the denominator. This notation should make this concept easier to understand. Be careful, as other textbooks, including the PMBOK guide, use an acronym EAC to represent this modified baseline. This can be confusing, as this is not the same EAC we calculated earlier in this module. For that reason, it is recommended that you remember the notation used on this slide. The formula that we circled on this slide should be used for TCPI in most scenarios and unless otherwise told. Only use the alternative formula if you are given an alternative rebaseline budget. There are many acronyms and formulas to learn for the exam. Since even the most well-practiced test takers can mix up formulas and make mistakes, we advise that you include these formulas on your mind dump when taking the exam. A summary of formulas is provided on this slide. As a recommendation, they will be much easier to learn and memorize if you understand how they work. Try to learn why each variable is in a formula and what the relationship between them means. In a separate module, you will be given a chance to apply these formulas to project scenarios to practice earned value in an exam atmosphere. This will be followed by the presenter working through the solutions.